The sun dipped low over the sprawling estate, casting golden hues across the manicured lawns where the annual family gathering was in full swing. I stood at the edge of the crowd, my plain cotton shirt and worn jeans a stark contrast to the tailored suits and glittering dresses of my relatives. They milled about, sipping champagne, their laughter echoing like a chorus of judgment. I could feel their eyes on me, the whispers barely concealed behind manicured hands. "Look at him," I overheard Cousin Eliza say, her voice dripping with disdain, "still dressing like he's scraping by." Her words stung, but I kept my head down, clutching a glass of water, the only thing I'd taken from the lavish buffet. The family had always seen me as the odd one out, the one who never quite fit into their world of old money and ostentatious displays. They didn't know the truth, and I hadn't planned to tell them, not yet. I'd spent years building something they couldn't comprehend, something beyond their gilded cages. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a message from my assistant, ETA 10 minutes. I smiled to myself, the anticipation building. The estate's grandeur, with its marble fountains and rose gardens, felt like a stage, and I was about to rewrite the script. The chatter grew louder, the clinking of glasses more pronounced, as I stood quietly, letting their assumptions wash over me. They thought they knew me, poor, unassuming, the family's charity case. But I'd learned long ago that appearances could be deceiving, and I'd mastered the art of patience. The distant hum began to pierce the air, faint at first, like a low note in a symphony. No one else noticed, too wrapped up in their own egos. I glanced at my watch. It was almost time. The hum grew louder, a rhythmic thumping that started to turn heads. Aunt Margaret, with her pearl necklace and pinched expression, paused mid-sentence, her glass of wine tilting slightly. "What's that noise?" she muttered, her eyes narrowing as she scanned the horizon. I stayed silent, leaning against a stone pillar, my heart steady but my mind racing with the moment I'd been waiting for. The family had gathered here every year, always at Uncle Richard's estate, a monument to their inherited wealth. They flaunted their new cars, their vacation homes, their designer wardrobes, all while casting pitying glances my way. I'd heard the stories they told about me, the failed entrepreneur, the dreamer who never made it. They didn't know about the late nights, the deals struck in boardrooms across continents, the empire I'd built from nothing. I'd let them believe their version of me because it was easier that way. But today, the narrative would shift. The thumping grew undeniable now, and heads turned toward the sky. A speck appeared, glinting in the fading sunlight, growing larger with every second. "Is that a helicopter?" Cousin James asked, his voice tinged with confusion. I sipped my water, feigning disinterest, but inside, I was counting down. The chopper's sleek black form came into view, its blades slicing through the air with precision. The family's chatter faltered, replaced by gasps and murmurs. I could see Eliza's face, her smugness replaced by something else, and maybe even fear. The helicopter began its descent, aiming for the wide lawn beyond the rose garden. My phone buzzed again, landing now. I set my glass down and started walking toward the open field. The wind from the helicopter's blades whipped across the lawn, sending napkins and flower petals scattering. The family stood frozen, their faces a mix of awe and disbelief. I kept my pace steady, my worn sneakers crunching on the gravel path. Uncle Richard, the patriarch with his silver hair and commanding presence, stepped forward, his brow furrowed. "Whose is that?" he demanded, as if the estate itself was offended by the intrusion. I didn't answer, letting the moment speak for itself. The chopper touched down, its doors gleaming under the estate's floodlights. My assistant, Claire, stepped out first, her tailored suit as sharp as her efficiency. She gave me a nod, and I returned it, my calm exterior hiding the thrill coursing through me. The family's whispers grew frantic now, their assumptions unraveling. "Is that his?" I heard someone ask, the question laced with doubt. I reached the helicopter just as Claire opened the passenger door, revealing the leather interior and state-of-the-art controls. I turned to face the crowd, their eyes wide, their mouths slightly agape. "Surprise," I said simply, my voice carrying over the dying whine of the engines. Eliza's glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the stone patio. I didn't flinch. For years, I'd let them underestimate me, let them think I was nothing more than a footnote in their legacy. But I'd been building something bigger, something they couldn't buy with their trust funds. The helicopter wasn't just a vehicle. It was a statement. I climbed aboard, the leather cool against my skin, and looked out at the family, their faces a gallery of shock and envy. Claire handed me a tablet, the screen displaying figures that would make their jaws drop further. I was ready to show them just how wrong they'd been. The family began to move closer, drawn like moths to the helicopter's sleek presence. I could see Uncle Richard's face, his usual air of authority, shaken. He'd always been the one to lecture me about making something of myself, oblivious to the fact that I already had. I stepped out of the chopper, tablet in hand, and faced them. "You all seem surprised," I said, my tone even but laced with a confidence I'd kept hidden for years. The crowd parted slightly, their murmurs a mix of curiosity and unease. Eliza, recovering her composure, stepped forward, her arms crossed. "What's this about?" she asked, her voice sharp but unsteady. I smiled, not the timid smile they were used to, but one that carried weight. "This," I gestured to the helicopter, "is just the beginning." I tapped the tablet, pulling up a presentation I'd prepared for this moment. The screen lit up with graphs, numbers, and logos, my company's logo. Now, a name even they would recognize. I'd started with nothing. No inheritance, no connections, just a relentless drive. While they were busy flaunting their wealth, I'd been acquiring businesses, investing in tech startups, and building a network that spanned the globe. The figures on the screen told a story they couldn't ignore: billions in assets, thousands of employees, and a vision that dwarfed their petty displays. I handed the tablet to Uncle Richard, who stared at it, his face palling. "This is what I've been working on," I said, my voice cutting through the silence. The helicopter's blades had stilled, but the air felt charged, as if the ground itself was shifting beneath their feet. The family's reaction was a slow unraveling. Aunt Margaret's hand went to her pearls, clutching them like a lifeline. Cousin James, usually so quick with a sarcastic quip, stood speechless, his eyes darting between me and the helicopter. I could see the gears turning in their minds, recalculating everything they thought they knew about me. I didn't need their approval, but I wanted them to see to understand that their world, with its rigid hierarchies and inherited privilege, wasn't the only one that mattered. I walked back toward the chopper, Claire at my side, her presence a quiet reminder of the team that had helped me get here. "How?" Eliza finally blurted out, her voice cracking. "How did you afford this?" I turned, meeting her gaze. "Hard work," I said simply, "and a bit of strategy." I didn't mention the sleepless nights, the risks, the moments when failure seemed certain. They didn't need to know the cost, only the result. I invited them closer, letting them peer inside the helicopter, its interior a stark contrast to their antique-filled mansions. The technology, the precision, it was a glimpse into my world, one they'd never bothered to understand. Claire handed me a folder, and I pulled out a set of documents, contracts for partnerships that would make headlines. "This is just one piece of it," I said, holding up the folder. "There's more where this came from." The family exchanged glances, their earlier condescension replaced by something near respect maybe, or fear. The helicopter stood as a silent testament, its presence undeniable, its message clear. I was no longer the poor cousin they could dismiss. The evening took on a different tone after that. The family's usual rituals, gossip, boasts, subtle jabs faded into an awkward silence. I could feel their eyes following me as I moved through the crowd, no longer the outsider but the one who had changed the rules. Uncle Richard approached, his expression a mix of curiosity and grudging admiration. "You've been holding out on us," he said, his voice low. I shrugged, letting the moment linger. "I didn't think you'd be interested," I replied, and for the first time, he had no comeback. I made my way to the buffet, finally allowing myself a plate, though food was the last thing on my mind. The helicopter sat on the lawn, a dark silhouette against the twilight, and I knew it had done more than just arrive. It had rewritten my place in their world. I caught snippets of their conversations, words like company and billions floating through the air. They were piecing it together, trying to reconcile the image of the cousin they'd mocked with the man who'd just landed a helicopter. On their pristine lawn, Claire, ever efficient, was already fielding questions from a few curious relatives, her answers polite but guarded. I'd told her to keep it vague, let them wonder. The truth was, my empire was still growing, and this was just a glimpse. I glanced at my watch again, knowing I had a flight to catch, a real one, not just a dramatic entrance. The helicopter would take me to the airport, where my private jet waited. The family didn't need to know that part. Not yet. But as I looked at their faces, I knew they'd never see me the same way again. As the night deepened, the family's curiosity turned to questions, some hesitant, others bold. Cousin James, recovering his bravado, sidled up to me, a forced grin on his face. "So, what's the deal with the chopper? Renting it for the night?" he asked, fishing for a way to diminish what he'd seen. I met his gaze, unflinching. "It's mine," I said, letting the words hang. His grin faltered, and I could see the doubt creeping in. I didn't owe them explanations, but I gave them just enough to keep them guessing. "I've been busy," I added, gesturing toward the helicopter. "This is just one of the perks." The truth was, the helicopter was a small piece of a much larger puzzle. My company had interests in tech, real estate, and renewable energy, with offices in cities they'd only visited on vacation. I'd learned to move quietly, to let my work speak for itself. The family, so used to their loud displays of wealth, couldn't fathom that kind of discipline. I saw Eliza watching from a distance, her arms still crossed, her expression unreadable. She'd been the loudest in her mockery earlier, but now she was silent, her confidence shaken. I didn't need her apology. I needed her to see that the world was bigger than her narrow view. The helicopter's pilot, a seasoned professional I'd hired years ago, signaled that we were ready to depart. I nodded, knowing it was time to wrap this up. The family gathering, once a stage for their superiority, had become mine. I handed Claire the folder, instructing her to share just enough to keep them talking. The rest, they'd find out soon. Enough. The crowd parted as I made my way back to the helicopter, their eyes following every step. I could feel the weight of their attention, the shift in their perception. Uncle Richard tried one last time to assert his authority, calling out, "We should talk business sometime." I turned, offering a small smile. "Maybe," I said, knowing I'd never need his connections. My network was global, my deals sealed in rooms he'd never enter. I climbed aboard the chopper, the leather seats a reminder of how far I'd come. Claire followed, her tablet already buzzing with notifications, new deals, new opportunities. The family stood on the lawn, a mix of silhouettes against the estate's glowing lights. As the blades began to spin, the wind whipped up again, scattering their carefully arranged world. I looked out the window, catching Eliza's eye one last time. She didn't look away, and for a moment, I saw something like respect in her gaze. The helicopter lifted off, the ground falling away, the estate shrinking into a patchwork of privilege below. I leaned back, the hum of the engines a familiar comfort. This wasn't about revenge, it was about truth. They'd called me poor, assumed I was nothing, but I'd built something they couldn't touch. Claire handed me a report, and I skimmed it, already thinking about the next move. The family would talk about this for years, dissecting every detail, but I was already beyond their reach. The city lights appeared on the horizon, a reminder of the world waiting for me. From the air. The estate looked small, a relic of a world that no longer defined me. The helicopter banked smoothly, heading toward the airport where my jet was fueled and ready. I thought about the family, how they'd spent years measuring success by their narrow standards: estates, titles, social standing. I'd chosen a different path, one paved with risk and ambition. My company had started in a cramped apartment, with nothing but a laptop and a vision. Now, it was a name that opened doors, a force that shaped industries. The family didn't know about the sleepless nights, the deals that nearly fell through, the moments when I'd doubted myself. They only saw the result: the helicopter, the confidence, the undeniable proof that I'd surpassed them. Claire, ever the professional, was already drafting emails, her fingers flying across her tablet. "The board wants a meeting tomorrow," she said, her voice cutting through the hum of the engines. I nodded, my mind already shifting to the next challenge. The family gathering had been a detour, a chance to set the record straight, but my world was elsewhere. The helicopter's interior was quiet, a bubble of calm amidst the chaos of my life. I glanced at the tablet, the numbers still climbing, the empire still growing. The family's mockery had been a small thing, a fleeting annoyance, but it had given me this moment a chance to show them what I'd become. The city grew closer, its skyline a testament to what was possible. I was no longer the cousin they pitied. I was the one they'd never forget. The helicopter landed at a private hangar, the jet waiting just beyond, its sleek lines gleaming under the floodlights. I stepped out, the night air cool against my skin. Claire followed, her efficiency a constant in my ever-moving world. The family was behind me now, their estate a fading memory. They'd talk, they'd speculate, but they'd never truly understand. My life was a series of calculated moves, each one building on the last. The helicopter was just a symbol, a way to make them see what I'd accomplished. The real work was in the deals, the innovations, the lives my company touched. I boarded the jet, settling into a seat as the crew prepared for takeoff. Claire handed me a coffee, strong and black, just how I liked it. The press is already buzzing, she said, showing me a headline on her tablet. Mystery tycoon stuns family with helicopter arrival. I chuckled, shaking my head. Let them write their stories. I had work to do. The jet's engines roared to life, and I felt the familiar pull of ascent. The family would never know the half of it, the sacrifices, the risks, the moments when I'd bet everything on a single idea. They'd seen the helicopter, but they'd never see the late nights, the empty bank accounts, the sheer will it took to get here. I leaned back, closing my eyes for a moment, the hum of the jet a reminder of how far I'd come. The world below was a canvas, and I was painting it my way. The flight was smooth, the city lights giving way to the vast darkness of the night sky. I opened my laptop, pulling up reports from my team. The company was on the verge of a new acquisition, one that would shake the industry. I'd built this from nothing, and now it was a force no one could ignore. The family's mockery had been a small thing, a pinprick in a life filled with bigger battles. But it had given me a chance to show them, to make them see that their world wasn't the only one that mattered. I thought about Eliza's face, the way her confidence had crumbled. I didn't hate her. I didn't hate any of them. They were just limited, trapped in a mindset that valued appearance over substance. I'd chosen a different path, one that demanded everything but gave back more. Claire was on a call now, her voice low as she coordinated with our team in Singapore. The world didn't stop, and neither did I. The jet's cabin was a hub of activity, a microcosm of the empire I'd built. I typed out a quick email, setting the stage for tomorrow's meeting. The family gathering felt like a lifetime ago, a brief pause in a life that moved at the speed of ambition. I glanced out the window, the stars a reminder of how big the world was, how much was still out there. The helicopter had been a moment, a spark, but the fire was in everything I'd built since. As the jet cruised toward its destination, I allowed myself a moment to reflect. The family had called me poor, but they'd never understood what wealth really meant. It wasn't the helicopter, the jet, or even the billions on my balance sheet. It was the freedom to build, to create, to leave a mark on the world. I'd done that, and I was just getting started. The family would go back to their lives, their estates, their petty rivalries, but I was already moving forward. The helicopter had been a statement, but my life was the story. I closed my laptop, the reports saved, the plans in motion. Claire looked up, her expression one of quiet pride. She'd been with me from the early days, when the dream was just a sketch on a napkin. Now, we were here, flying above a world that was ours to shape. The jet began its descent, the lights of a new city coming into view. I didn't know what the family would say about me tomorrow, or the day after, but it didn't matter. They'd seen the helicopter, felt the ground shake, and that was enough. I was no longer the cousin they pitied. I was the one who'd rewritten the rules. The jet touched down, and I stepped into the night, ready for the next chapter. The world was waiting, and I was ready to meet it.